Hey, Attorney Todd Hollis here. Great race going on in Allegheny County, Court of Common Pleas judge, 40 potential candidates and only 9 seats. I got 3 of the hottest candidates here today right now to introduce themselves and their platforms to you. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Attorney Todd Hollis. Welcome to another episode of Civil Action. Court of Common Pleas judge going on right here in Allegheny County. It's a whole lot of candidates, and I've got 3 of the most exciting candidates right here on my show right here today to introduce themselves and their platforms. I can't wait. Let's get into this. Hi, candidates. How are you?
Morning, Todd.
Hi, Todd.
Good morning.
All right. I have Miss Alyssa Cowen, Mr. Jimmy Sheets, and Miss Rosemary Crawford, all here on Civil Action to introduce themselves. Hey, I am so very excited for this hot race. Thank you guys for coming on my show. How are y'all doing?
Very well.
Very well. Thank you so much.
Hey, listen, I appreciate the fact that y'all took time out of your busy schedules to be with me here today. I know people don't want to hear me talk, so let's get into it. Miss Cowen, I see you in my upper left-hand corner. Why don't you do me a favor and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience?
Terrific. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Alyssa Cowen, and really my impetus for entering this race started at the beginning of my career, the beginning of my legal career back in 2001, when I started out as a legal intern in Philadelphia's law department and their child welfare section. And sadly, it didn't take long when I entered the courtroom to see the depersonalized, mechanical, and often chaotic way that families were pushed through a system that was purportedly in place to help them. And I had obtained my master's in social work prior to going to law school. So the juxtaposition of my social work training with what I believe the courts could offer to our most vulnerable families was quite striking. And so at that point, I really decided that I would dedicate myself to improving the courtroom experience for our families entering the courtroom, no matter what position I was in. And throughout the course of my career, I have dedicated my work to the most vulnerable children and families. Each step of my legal career, I've taken to serving their needs as a staff attorney at Kids Voice and in my current position as a county solicitor representing the children, youth, and families in the county law department. I've had the opportunity to be the sole legal counsel in about 8,000 juvenile law proceedings, 500 of which I have tried to verdict. And each of those cases has been unique and significant and impactful in many different ways. And I've really taken those experiences and have learned from those experiences, and especially applying both my social work and legal skills to improving the outcomes for children. So, for example, one of my cases was an 8-year-old child who had been prescribed 10 different psychotropic medications by many different providers. And as his court-appointed medical decision maker, I worked with his mental health team to be able to cut down his prescribed medications to only 3. So coordination of those kind of systems and services for our children. In another case of mine, I represented a 14-year-old girl who had been sexually abused by 3 of her mother's boyfriends as her mother was struggling with her own substance use disorder. And this child was also a really gifted student academically, but she had been siphoned off into the alternative disciplinary educational programs in her schools because of her own mental health background, her own trauma, and her own multiple placements through the child welfare system. And I worked as her court-appointed educational decision maker to ensure that she was getting enrolled in those gifted and honors programs that provided her with the opportunity to have a path to college that she wanted, that she saw herself being able to obtain. And really, I've seen firsthand in my cases that when judges don't have have that background in human services, we often do see poor outcomes like the 2 children I described before there was actually intervention. Those children's cases were open for over a year and had multiple court hearings before things were turned around to improve for them. I'm the candidate who has that background in both law and social work in order to be able to have the most impact and make meaningful decisions and changes in a child and a family's life. I think it's important that our courtrooms are trauma informed, that we're providing a safe space so that people can tell their stories and that judges are able to get the full stories in a safe setting in order to make those best decisions. We talk a lot about criminal justice reform, and I really think that starts by looking closely at our juvenile and dependency system, looking at our delinquency involved kids and ensuring that their needs are being met. Criminal justice reform starts at those young ages, and we don't want bad decisions being made during those in those younger lives that lead them to then becoming involved as adults in the criminal justice system. So that's really important to me when we're looking at criminal justice reform, to start with our youngest court involved individuals. I'm highly rated by the Allegheny County Bar Association, and given my depth of law and experience in this field, I am the candidate who's able to really start on day one with that in-depth experience. And I want to remain in the family division, and I think that's important too, that we elect some judges who are committed to remaining in that family division. And so I look forward to participating in this discussion today and hope that I can earn people's support in their vote on May 18th.
Well, I certainly appreciate the fact that you come here today. Seems like you do have a strong background in family law. Where did you go to law school at? I
attended Temple.
Okay, Philadelphia.
Yes.
All right. So, all right. Well, welcome to Pittsburgh. I appreciate your intro. Mr. Sheets, how are you, sir?
Very well, Todd. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, listen, do me a favor, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your platform.
Sure. I'm attorney Jimmy Sheets. I am running for the Court of Common Plea, obviously. That's why I'm here on your show. I attended undergraduate at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I did my undergraduate work in 3 years and then went immediately to Duquesne University School of Law, where I got my JD. I was admitted to practice in 1998 and worked in a couple of different things until I got hired at the Public Defender's Office in 2000. Worked at the Allegheny County Public Defender's Office for 5 years, 2000 to 2005. During that time, I gained an immense amount of knowledge and experience representing the criminally accused in Allegheny County. Indigent individuals that for that office would not have had representation. I represented people on everything from summary offenses up through and including a homicide case before I left. In 2005, I went out into private practice and have had a private practice for in excess of 15 years now. That practice has predominantly been in criminal defense, and again, representing people with relatively minor summary or traffic offenses, including the most serious offense a fellow citizen can be charged with, and that is homicide. During my time in private practice, I have continued to help the indigent residents of Allegheny County by accepting hundreds, if not thousands, court appointments by every judge in criminal case. I have done a limited amount of cases for the civil division of Allegheny County. I had that opportunity and enjoyed it. And in family court, I have represented juvenile offenders charged with crimes on hundreds, if not thousands of occasions. And more importantly, and just as important, I have represented both plaintiffs and defendants on PFA actions. A lot of the defendants privately, but I have on hundreds of occasions represented plaintiffs who are attempting to get a PFA pro bono through neighborhood legal service. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, is going to court on a day-to-day basis. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. I've known you personally for a good part of those 20 years, and I've seen you in the courtrooms, and I know that you are very aggressive and thorough in your representation of your clients, and I also appreciate the fact that you've taken out time to introduce yourself to your potential constituents. So thank you very much. Miss Rosemary Crawford, how are you, ma'am?
I am just fine. Thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your platform?
Sure. My name is Rosemary Crawford, and I'm a candidate for Court of Common Pleas judge. I'm running because I think I will be a good judge who will do a good job for Allegheny County. I think it's so important at this time where we can have real transformative change of a person who has been an attorney. I've been an attorney for 31 years, a broad amount of legal experience. And much of that time, I've served as a trial attorney in court. In my early days, I was a prosecutor. After that time, I served as a juvenile court conflict counsel representing our children and helping them from being incarcerated. I've also served as director of legal resources for the YWCA Greater Pittsburgh under the umbrella of the Center Against Racism, where I was trained in cultural competence and I taught cultural competence to corporations and others. This is so important because right now we're in a time where we know that we need real change in our court system. We have had situations where people have literally been rioting because they don't believe there's real justice in our country and in this county. I think part of that issue is we do not have a good reflection of diversity on the bench. This is something that's very important that literally must be discussed. Of the 44 judges, only 3 are African American, and only one of those is an African American woman. People need real diversity on the bench and people who are judges with cultural competence. We've had issues of judges who have been suspended because of their bias. Implicit bias and bigotry is not acceptable, and it's something we need to look at. I have a history of training in this regard. For many years, 15 years, I was a trial attorney doing litigation in state and federal court against discrimination, employment discrimination, workers' compensation, unemployment compensation, things of that nature. And I have fought against discrimination. And I think it's very important to have those tools and to train corporations against discrimination. Going back to my family law experience, I talked about the fact of my juvenile law experience representing our children. Also, I have done family law work in terms of PFAs. For decades, over a decade, I was on the board of Neighborhood Legal Services, providing reduced fee and free services to people who were indigent, those who could not afford being represented. And I also was treasurer of Pennsylvania Legal Services, helping to provide free resources and reduced fee resources across the state. I was appointed to the House of Delegates at that time. Again, I worked for the poor and the indigent to get those services. Now, in terms of my Bar Association experience, I was the first African-American attorney to chair the Young Lawyers section of the bar. I was elected to Board of Governors, and I was also advocated for women as being in the Women's Bar Association, where I was on their board, and the Pennsylvania the Pennsylvania Board of Governors when I was a young lawyer. With all of these board situations, I use these as opportunities to promote those who were the most vulnerable. In terms of my community service, I have spent decades serving the poor, working with Gwen's girls, working with certain community housing projects where I've gone into those communities and taught and trained the youth. In terms of being a lifelong member of the NAACP, working with BPEP to promote voter securities and other organizations. I think having the legal experience on my level, having done everything from product liability with the biggest law firms to vaccine litigations with the Department of Justice where I received the Special Achievement Award, to working in the corporate world where I've trained. And now I'm a Chapter 7 bankruptcy trustee, who is just quasi-judicial, meaning I preside over hearings. I preside over thousands of cases. I ensure I treat everyone with dignity and respect. I'm also arbitrator with the Better Business Bureau and FINRA, in which I decide securities issues. So I have a broad range of legal experience as a trial attorney and as a presiding officer. I believe that my judicial temperament, which means how I treat people with dignity and respect, my integrity, my community service, and frankly, my diversity. And I'm talking about it because I have seen non-African American candidates talk about diversity, but it's something as an African American woman I can talk about as well. And I will say it's important. And I would like to make sure that everyone knows that sometimes it's important for people who are in the system to see people who look like them so that they feel that they have justice and real opportunity. Most of the people, unfortunately, in the criminal justice system, a high percentage are African American. They have suffered bias at the hands of people who are not culturally competent, who have made horrible remarks, very bigoted against them. And there has been a lack of parity. I bring that. Also, my compassion, my caring for the youth, my actual experience in family law and in juvenile. All of these things I think are important. When I was a child, a judge changed my life. My mother was a teacher in Mississippi. She made the call. She accepted the call of a federal judge to integrate a school. I went with her. I was one of 6 Black children that integrated a school in Mississippi. So you can imagine what I was faced with. But from that experience, I learned we're all the same. Everyone wants a better life for their children, and everyone wants fairness and justice. That's what I bring to the table. Real life understanding, real diversity, real experience, and real compassion and community service. So I hope that I'm considered and those credentials are something that are valued, and I hope that I'm valued. And I say that to say that many times African Americans feel disenfranchised, even a princess of England. So you can imagine that I have felt that way as well in this county, and even felt invisible by some people who were not even willing to give me an opportunity as a Black woman. These issues must be discussed. I think transparency is paramount, and I bring fairness, honesty, integrity to the table, and a willingness to discuss and listen to all the issues. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All of you are trial attorneys. You seem to have very, very strong backgrounds in both family and criminal law, which are 2 of the biggest divisions, in our bench. So I certainly see the value that you guys are bringing to the table. I myself has had an opportunity to talk to various members on my social media platform about some of the issues that are relevant to them and what they kind of want to see in a court of common pleas judge. So I've asked them, if they had the opportunity, what would they ask of a potential court of common pleas judge? So if you don't mind, I'd like to share that list with you and get your take on it. And whichever candidate, after that initial candidate responds, wants to chime in and kind of add their take on it, I certainly would welcome that additional information. Are you guys up for that?
I am.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So candidates, what I'd like to do is I want to go to my social media platform. There's about 27 individuals who have asked questions. I want to pose that one particular question to each one of you. And I'm going to start with Miss Rosemary Crawford because I began with Miss Cowen. So I need a number 1 through 27, Miss Crawford.
3.
Did you say 3?
Yes.
All right. Number 3 comes from Janet L. Neathammer. She says, eradicating white supremacy, it's the root of almost all of the issues. How do you feel about that?
And I thank you for that question. I do believe that privilege plays a role in bias. And a lot of judges and people in legal community suffer that bias, and they're not aware because they're not culturally competent. I have a history of being trained on cultural competence and training people on cultural competence, and I understand that bias can play a role. And as a arbitrator for the Better Business Bureau, I can decide if a person gets a new car or not. I was recently faced with a situation where a Caucasian male talked down to me, was very disrespectful, and told me he knew he would not get justice from me. I did, in that particular instance, award him a new car, despite his disrespect, because the facts and the law required me to do so. And I happily did so because that was my role. I think a lot of times we have judges in Allegheny County and maybe across the country that are not aware of that bias. We have one that was suspended recently, that resigned recently because of his rude, disrespectful comments and bias against a person in his courtroom. This is something that it does take training. It's something that I believe our courts need to work on. I have a lot of program experience. When I was at the YWCA, I had a program to get free lawyers for people called 100 Lawyers Program, where I trained people on family law and got continual legal education credit for it, so that they could all pick one case to represent people for free. So I think with that program experience I have, I would help to work with the courts on cultural competence training. Also, I would say, which is a little bit beyond that question, but I wanted to point out that we do need to modernize our courts, to use more Zoom, to use telephone conferences, things of that nature for certain things like status conferences. We have a lot of poor people who may not have a vehicle, who may not afford expensive parking downtown, or the buses may not come to their communities, and they're missing work or childcare or late to court because they don't have transportation for certain things where we could do it virtually. But that's my response to that. White supremacy plays a role. We have a long way to go, and that's why diversity on the bench is so important. We've got to do better than what we're doing now.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Ms. Cowen, Mr. Sheets.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to chime in
Yes, ma'am.
From my own work and experience in terms of there's no question that in our nation's history, white supremacy has led to structural racism and injustices that result in the situations that cause many individuals to become court involved. We can, a simple brief history of the U.S. when we look at slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration of Black men in brief, and how that shows up in our courtrooms. With the families that I've worked with over time, when we're looking at something like the mass incarceration of Black men, I'm working directly with families that have been destabilized as a result of that, right? Children are more vulnerable. They've now lost a parent to the criminal justice system. Oftentimes parents being incarcerated in facilities far away from their community for long periods of time. Those are taking away not only an emotional support, but oftentimes a financial support for a family, loss of income, loss of having somebody to talk to a child about their homework and their school day and everything else. So, we see that. I mean, our kids end up oftentimes in foster care because of over incarceration of African Americans. And that's an issue that's incredibly important to me. And we need to do better. We need to do better as judges. We need to be mindful and careful that we're limiting incarceration to the most serious circumstances, that we're not removing people from their communities and their families frequently and unnecessarily. And also just, we have to have a commitment to that. Judges are leaders in their community. They need to provide leadership around these issues. They need to be invested in any kind of efforts that are taking place in their courthouses to address these issues. And, likewise, I had the privilege of working as a legal trainer for the statewide adoption and permanency network, providing legal trainings all across the state of Pennsylvania on a variety of child welfare laws and topics, specifically focusing my work with 16 Western Pennsylvania counties. And one training that was near and dear to my heart was called Opening Doors, Children of Incarcerated Parents, and explaining and emphasizing how caseworkers can engage incarcerated parents in the planning for their children, that we need to facilitate more visits, more letters, more contact, any way that we can in order to facilitate those relationships, engage parents in the planning for their children, have them participate in our court hearings. We can do way better with, especially now that we've gotten better with this technology, to even have people participating more regularly in all of their court hearings. Parents are often prioritized for their criminal cases, but not included by their place, the facility where they're incarcerated, in their family division cases. They're not prioritized. So, we need to make sure that we're giving everybody the opportunity to participate in all the cases that are impacting their family and their life.
Sure. Mr. Sheets.
Todd, I will say this. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that if I am elected judge, I can single-handedly eradicate systemic racism. It is an issue that I have fought against for in excess of 20 years in representing individuals in a system that is systemically racist. When I went to work for the public defender's office, I started doing preliminary hearings. And I noticed immediately that the majority of my clients were from African-American communities. They weren't from where I grew up in Bell Park and Upper St. Clair and Mount Lebanon, not even charged with the pedestrian offenses. So I knew from the beginning of my legal career that the system wasn't perfect. More than not perfect, it was inherently flawed. As an individual, I have fought on a case-by-case basis to, as best I can, represent people fairly and equitably in a system that necessarily isn't. I think as running for judge, as a jurist, Ms. Crawford has some excellent ideas about how to change the system as a whole with training, cultural diversity and things of that nature. I don't know that I think most of the judges we have don't get it. Being in the criminal courthouse every day for 20 years, certain judges excluded, those that have left most recently in disgrace. I think a lot of the judges do get it. I think a lot of the diversionary courts that have been set up in Allegheny County were set up specifically to deal with veterans, people with mental health issues, people with substance abuse issues. I, as a jurist, would bring that same individual treatment that I have to every client I've represented in a systemically racist system to each case I would hear as a judge, no matter what division I was in. And that's the most I believe, I could personally do if elected. And I vow to do that should the voters of Allegheny County put me on the bench, is in each case address for that individual that's in front of me the systemic racism and how it has impacted them up to that point and how it's impacting facts of the case as I can be here. Thank you.
I think that Janet was not necessarily talking about what one particular judge would do. I mean, I'm sure that's part of her, her question. But I think the broader issue is one of culture. Cultural change has to happen in group fashion as opposed to, just simply one individual. So I certainly understand where you're coming from when you say, you as one person can't certainly change 50 to 100 years of racism. But I think that, these issues have to be raised in order for, a Jimmy Sheets or a Rosemary Crawford or, a Miss Cowen, to say, we need to look at these things differently. Because, when you guys get elected to the bench, you are going to be a part of those judges' meetings. You're going to be invited on different panels and people are going to care what you think. So to the extent that your contribution to those conversations addresses these issues, then it does help to change the culture. And I think that's what people want. I think that's what people need. And I know that it happens not just, in the criminal division, where I was for 27 years, but it happens in the family division too, where, young people come in and they're inexperienced parents. They're making mistakes. They're trying to figure out life. They don't have a whole lot of money, and they are probably underwater as far as responsibility is concerned. But yet, the courts are pounding all of these programs and throwing all of these responsibilities at them. And then when they can't meet them, they take their kids from them. That has to change, at least in my opinion. So I don't know that necessarily speaks on systemic racism, but I think that the culture has to change. It has to be more inclusive so that, individuals aren't just, put into one pile. Okay, you don't have money, you don't have a lawyer, so therefore we're going to place you in this pile. And if you can't meet all of our expectations in 30 to 90 days, we're going to take your kids from you and we're going to, we're just going to be through with you. Like that has to change. But I thought all of your, very well-reasoned opinions, as trial attorneys, over 20 to 30 years certainly makes sense. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Sheets, pick a number 1 through 27, please.
Number 13.
Number 13. What made you choose number 13?
Lucky number 13.
All right. Christopher Floyd says bail abatement. So what do you think about the issues of bail abatement as it relates to our judicial system?
Well, I anticipated the question. The reason I anticipated the question is that it is a popular topic out there right now. And I fear my answer, much like my last one, may not stage-gate the larger picture. But I'm going to say a couple of things about bail abatement. Okay. As far as bail abatement, it's easy to say, let's do away with cash bail. That is the answer. It is the popular thing to say. So I'm going to answer your question in two ways. One, again, I'm running for judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny, not running for the state legislature. Illinois recently did away with cash bail. That was done through the legislature in the state of Illinois. This is a legislative issue in the larger picture. Okay?
Nah, it's hold on. It's not. Because to the extent that someone is coming in front of you and you have to impose bail, then it's your personal perspective obviously comes into play. So
right,
go ahead. Right.
Which brings me to the second part of my answer. Okay.
Okay.
Again, if elected to the Court of Common Pleas as a jurist, given the opportunity to address bail on individual cases, that's exactly how I look at bail abatement. I think the Bail Act gives a jurist an awful lot of breadth to look at a particular situation and say, I will or I will not impose a bail here. And if I'm going to impose a bail, what it be? What additional restrictions I may put on individuals? Look, like I said, I've been in that system, in that courthouse, in excess of 2 decades, almost on a daily basis. And I've seen a significant change in Allegheny County over that time. I mean, you will remember from your time in there that bail was heard by the judge that had the case. And so if luck of the draw, you had this judge or that judge, that could significantly impact what your bond was going to In Allegheny County now, we use pretrial services, JRS, justice-related services. The Department of Human Resources is heavily involved. Bail is reviewed, immediately denied by a magistrate. And I think we have done a better job in Allegheny County to get people out of the Allegheny County jail, and not necessarily back immediately to the street, but to a drug and alcohol rehab, to something through JRS that's going to address mental health and addiction issues simultaneously. So to simply say bail abatement, I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon and say I'm going to eliminate cash bail. A, because I couldn't. But me personally, as a jurist in that situation, I do not believe people should be sitting in jail simply because they cannot pay money to get out. That doesn't make sense to me. You and I both get arrested for the same crime with, similar criminal background, and you're given a $5,000 cash bail that you can't make, and I'm released underwater. Or I'm given the $5,000 cash bail, I can post it. That's unfair, inherently unfair. And people do lose their homes because they're sitting in the jail over $200,000, $500,000 simply because they can't. And that is inherently wrong. I don't know that the answer is to simply say, well, I, Judge James P. Sheets, will eliminate cash bail. No. When given the opportunity to address a bail issue as a judge on the Court of Common Pleas, I will look at that case, that individual, their contact with the criminal justice system, their ability to make a bond if I would want to today. And to the extent I have it, the facts surrounding the allegations at that point, because that's all they are at that point are allegations. The purpose of bail was meant to make sure that people show up. I think now with the system we have with releasing people on non-monetary bond, requiring that they appear in person or by phone, needs to continue. I think that system needs to be enforced. If people are not showing up, are not calling in, I think they need to be brought back in front of a judge and ask, look, I let you out, you're with your family, you're keeping your home, you're keeping your job, but I put requirements on you to make sure that you're going to show up for court. I don't want bail to be punitive, but it's meant to be punitive, and it shouldn't be. So I hope, unlike my last response, I hope that one addresses your question a little more fully. But that's what I would do personally if elected to the bench, and I had the opportunity to consider bail for any citizen of Allegheny County.
Yeah, it's not what I want. It's certainly your perspective, and I'm going to give Ms. Cowen and Ms. Rosemary Crawford an opportunity to chime in as well. You guys have any thoughts?
I do. On January 6th, individuals rioted and attempted to overthrow the government of the United States of America, the United States Capitol.
They will never forget.
They were released on their own. Once some were arrested, released on their own recognizance, given organic food, and allowed to leave the country, even though 5 people died. And I'm not aware that those rioters were charged with felony murder. But I just say that to say, if those people could be released on their own recognizance without bail, certainly the Allegheny County residents could have the same privilege. So I don't believe that putting people in jail because they don't have money is real justice. So yes, I am not for cash bail.
Ms. Cowen?
Thank you. So I think we all acknowledge here that cash bail disproportionately impacts our poorer communities, and that's a huge problem. People should not be getting unequal justice right out the gate. That absolutely needs to be addressed, and judges do have a lot of discretion over imposing cash bail, and that discretion needs to be yielded very carefully and cautiously and mindful of these disparities and disproportionality. As a jurist. I would really limit cash bail for the most serious of crimes, the most violent crimes, issues where there's, a community danger that's significant. And if there's an issue of really serious concern about somebody not showing up for their next hearing. But outside of those, very limited areas, we really need to cut down it's almost like just this habit that judges are in, this overutilization, over-reliance, and doing it mechanically and without thinking and without looking at the individual circumstances. That needs to end. And judges do have that discretion already. And so need to be mindful of that.
Well thought of, opinions. I remember, in my preliminary hearing days with the public defender's office, we would often see bails set, $100,000 for somebody with simple possession of marijuana, $50,000, for somebody who, was late for court or some other, very heinous result from what I would consider to be, something that wasn't substantively, serious or life-threatening to a third party. These cultural issues on the bench certainly definitely need to change. Ms. Cowen, I need a number from you, 1 through 27, please.
I'll go with 15.
15. I got to ask you, what made you choose 15?
That's my birth date. It's the 15th of August.
Okay. Well, this question comes from a member of our legal community, attorney Mart Harris. He says, experience as a trial attorney for actual people. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we need to make sure that we are focused on actual people and the people showing up in our courtrooms and their individualized needs. My career has been focused on courtroom work, trial work, appearing in all of those cases and all of those hearings. And I think that there's no question that we have to make sure that not only as a judge, but as attorneys, that we're giving each of our clients the individualized attention assessment that they need. And we're not just pushing them through a system. Dockets are big, but we also need to make sure that we are giving everybody the time that they deserve, the fair assessment of their case. I said this in my introduction, but providing a trauma-informed courtroom is really important to me. I think we've all been in courtrooms where we know judges are screaming and having temper issues and kind of extremely authoritative in their approach to people. And at least in my experience, that doesn't lead to the best outcomes because people are, again, just scared walking in. That's not okay. We need people walking into courtrooms knowing that they're at least going to be provided with an environment created by the judge. It's the judge who creates those environments in the courtroom and either makes those courtroom environments conducive to the attorneys being able to fully present their cases and for the individuals to be able to fully tell their stories. So we do need to be focused on people, on their needs, and ensuring that we're not losing that in the process, in the law, in the pleadings, in adversarial discovery back and forth. And I think it's the judge who sets that tone, manages that courtroom, and makes sure that we're not losing those individuals in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, I had a federal hearing at a civil rights matter that I'm dealing with. And it was very contentious, between the attorneys. And, I understand that. I've done criminal law for the majority of my career. So, that play between attorneys is not something that, that is lost on me. But, one of the attorneys that I was dealing with, has, basically at every turn, provided some kind of contentious, information into our relationship. And I said to the judge, I said, Judge, we're only at the initial conference phase. I don't know what happens when we get into discovery. I said, it might be best for you to appoint a master, because we're going to be back here in a week. I'm certain of it. And what he said to me, and I've been doing this a long time. He said to me, he said, listen, Mr. Hollis, I've been doing this for 38 years. He said, in my 38 years of doing this kind of work, he said, I've never had to appoint a master. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily what he said, but it was how he said it that set the tone. He was giving notice to myself and opposing counsel that we need to act as if we're professionals. You know what I mean? The issues that we're dealing with aren't so difficult that we can't understand what's going on. So we need to treat each other accordingly. And I needed to hear that. You know what I mean? So when you said that, the judges definitely set the tone. They have great power in their words. And, a cool, calm, collected judge makes for a cool, calm, collected courtroom. And everybody doesn't feel that angst. You know what I mean? When you're stepping to the podium and you're presenting your legal argument, that the judge is going to jump down your throat and possibly throw you in jail because you said the wrong thing.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So again, it's just, yes, I very much believe in order for everybody to produce their best work, the setting needs to be set in a way that allows people to do that allows people to be able to, present their cases fully and not just, worrying about the fear of a certain reaction from a judge. And that's also, we want to build up confidence, right, in the individuals who are coming into the courtroom. I think, it does a serious disservice. We're in the courtroom all the time. Like, we've had a lot of experience. We've had a lot of different personalities. We've had to deal with a lot of different situations. So we can kind of look over a period of a time and say it all kind of shakes out in the wash. But for people who are coming in and this might be their only legal proceeding, it's not okay to have people screaming at each other and judges being short-tempered. And that's not okay. That doesn't build up confidence in the judiciary and the public. So
yeah, especially when most people don't want to. Most people don't want to be there anyway. Right. So, yeah, okay. Mr. Sheets, Miss Crawford, anything you want to add to this conversation?
Sure. Absolutely. Judicial temperament is very important. As a hearing officer, I always treat everyone in front of me with dignity and respect. And when I have taken off, some of the attorneys complain that their clients want me back because they like how I treat them. So I do appreciate that as a compliment. And I would say definitely people are more important than experience. But experience, of course, matters, knowing the rules of evidence and having that training. I will say in terms of people, one of my most notable experiences was representing an autistic gentleman who was actually an instructor at a university who was being beaten by his drug-addicted wife. And the hug that he gave me after he got the PFA, the Protecting from Abuse Order, was very memorable because I represented people often who never even said thank you because they didn't value my service because it was free. But I know that what we do impacts people's actual lives. And what we do is so important because it actually is making a difference, and judges make a difference. So absolutely, that temperament and integrity, treating everybody fairly. I even wish people, I say thank you and have a good day after every hearing, because I know that when they're in front of me, some of them, it's the worst experience of their lives. And when they leave, they feel like, you know what, that's good. I even had a person I sued thank me for how I treated him in a case last year. And that says a lot And I appreciate it, but I try to treat everyone with dignity and respect. I just think that's so important. And I mentioned my mother earlier. I lost her a few years ago, Alzheimer's.
My condolences.
And thank you. But I say to say that I care about the most vulnerable. How we treat the most vulnerable is important, whether it's a child, a disabled person, a senior, because the people are supposed to love my mother were abusing her, and I had to go in and take over. So I took some time off from my position to go to Memphis to take care of her, but I was shocked. But just to say, people are what really matter in this whole thing. We're here as servant leaders to serve the people of Allegheny County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sheets.
Todd, I couldn't agree more. I think when someone is running for judge, certainly their experience, their knowledge of the law are both definitely credentials that voters should look for. I was asked recently by someone else running for judge who my base was. And it sort of caught me off guard because my base is everybody out there. I feel like, I am sort of the everyman. I don't consider myself better or worse than anybody because I have a bar card. I never have. And I think that has helped me in 20 years representing people that find themselves charged in the criminal justice system, or the plaintiff or the defendant on a PFA over in family court. It is imperative that the people we elect relate to everyday people, the struggles that they're going through on a daily basis, whether they're brand new to a courtroom or they've been in that courtroom 10 times. Bringing a sense of humility to the bench is something I think is extremely important. I think everyone aspires to be fair and impartial, to follow the law. But to put that robe on and continue to be humble and bring some humility and humanity to the bench, I believe, based on my personal experiences over the last 20 years, as well as my professional experience, is an advantage that I have. I hope that answers the question, and that's I think people ought to consider when they go to the polls on May 18th.
Yeah, I think it certainly does. This is a different day. Having seen all of the changes that social media adds to the conversation is very unique. There was a time when people showed up at the voting booth and they simply voted the Democratic or the Republican ticket because that's what they were told they were supposed to do. Sadly, I did that myself. I mean, I didn't know who the candidates were. I don't even think I knew really what a judge did. I saw that person on TV, but I certainly had never met them. And I didn't know that I, as a potential, voter, had the power of putting these people in office. So I really appreciate, social media from the standpoint that it gives, potential constituents an opportunity to meet, Ms. Cowen, to hear, what her platform is, to listen to her voice, to relate to her experiences, or to listen to Mr. Jimmy Sheets as he so eloquently has spoken during the course of this interview. And certainly, Ms. Rosemary Crawford, has had a very storied career, in dealing with a varied number of people from a diverse background. That is what our constituents need so that they can make well-reasoned and well-informed decisions. And for the sake of you guys coming here today and putting that, out there and laying it on the table for our constituents to have an opportunity to review, is definitely a plus. And I applaud you and I thank you for that. So 40 potential candidates for Court of Common Pleas judge. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen so many judges running for the same position. I think there were 9 seats? Am I correct?
Yeah.
All right. So
9 seats.
So the final question that I have for you all, and I'm really interested to hear what your perspective is on this. And you probably have, in some way, have already answered it, but why should a potential constituent vote for you? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Sheets. Why should, John Doe vote for you for judge?
Well, at the risk of sounding redundant, I would rely on what I said in that last, and that is I have been in the courthouse day in and day out for 20 years, representing people that otherwise would not have an attorney, representing people on cases as simple summary offense up through including where their entire life, for the rest of their life was alive. I have dealt with judges, the gamut of fair and impartial, to have a second prosecutor up on the bench while you're trying to defend. I have learned, Todd, I didn't graduate from law school and start practicing law and qualified to be a judge. Every single day, I feel like I've learned something new. About the law, about the world around us, quite frankly. And I would bring that willingness to be open-minded, to continue to learn and grow as a person. I certainly don't have all the answers. Wish I did. And if I did, I would spew them out in the next 3 minutes and everyone in the county would run to the polls to vote. But it's that candor, that admission, that humility that I have, because I've been through the system. I have been in the system. So I bring a unique perspective to this. I would bring a unique perspective to the bench because I have seen the criminal justice system from about every aspect you can see it. I have represented every kind of individual. I have represented pure evil. People that when they looked at me, I could see nothing when I look back at them. But I don't represent individuals necessarily so much as I represent the constitutional ideal that everyone is entitled to fair trial. Whether it's a 14-year-old child charged for the first time over in juvenile court, or a multiple offender in adult court who has been in and out their entire life. Both of those people deserve fair, impartial, and zealous representation. The same approach I've taken to being a lawyer, to treat everyone I encounter, whether it's the police, prosecutor, the judge, or my client, with respect, dignity, civility, is what I would bring to the bench. I think experience, number of years I've been doing this, my knowledge of and who I have become as a person over my life, my journey to where I'm at now, would all make me an excellent jurist. When anybody talks about diversity on the bench, I am a middle-aged white guy that grew up on the mean streets of Bethel Park. Not a whole lot suggests diversity there. But what we have to do, everyone that goes to vote on May 18th, all of us that are involved in this discussion, is remember, diversity is a mindset. It is the person open-minded? Are they fair? Are they impartial? We work in a system that we all acknowledge has issues. It definitely needs improved upon, but it is also one of the only systems that has survived almost 200 years in continuum. And it has evolved. The law is a beautiful, living creature that we have to guide, nourish, feed, correct, all of that. I think I bring that perspective to the bench, and I ask that people give me a fair opportunity. I very much appreciate the opportunity you've provided people to hear what I have to say. And I ask those who feel what I'm saying and understand where I'm coming from, vote for me on May 8th. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you again, Todd, for giving me this opportunity and all of us this opportunity to discuss our backgrounds with your audience. I am running for judge. Oh, thank you. I'm running for judge because I really believe I can make a difference in the lives of children and families in our region. I believe I will be a good judge. I believe this is an opportunity for real transformative change. This is an opportunity to have more diversity on a bench that is not diverse when I'm talking race and gender, and very concrete things I'm talking about. I'm also talking about cultural competence, having someone who has the experience. I have 31 years as an attorney doing trial work. I'm a quasi-judicial officer with a federal appointment from the Department of Justice with security clearance. I'm also a person who's been dedicated to a lifetime of volunteered community service, from helping children, women, and seniors. I even helped form an organization to help autistic children. This is something, and many for free, and also to a nonprofit to help children after school program, and not including the mentoring I've done with the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations, just going to schools, street law programs, helping people who are re-entering citizens, ex-offenders, and moot court competitions for the youth. I have a whole lifetime of volunteer community service. Also, a leader in the Bar Association, a person of integrity, high morals, who's worked diligently to improve our community, and to be an outstanding lawyer. I did receive the Outstanding Young Lawyer Award when I was a young lawyer from the Allegheny County Bar Association, among numerous awards that I have received from the state and the county and the Department of Justice. And I just think it's imperative to look at these things, how important it is right now during this time to have someone with my programming background, in addition to my legal experience. I want to work with judicial reform, restorative justice, to work with community organizations like I do now, to work with healing programs with victims and offenders, to find alternatives to cash bail by working with programming like they've done in other cities, and also to modernize the courts. We can do many hearings on Zoom. We can do many by telephone call. There's alternatives to help our poor people without vehicles, people without who need childcare and who can lose their job by having to go to court. I think this is so imperative. This is a real opportunity to get, and we have to remember there are 9 vacancies, but to get 9 highly qualified, competent attorneys to be judges to make our system better. And unfortunately, I have experienced a lot of racism as a Black woman. So and some from the court. So I can't say that all the judges have treated me well. I'm not privileged. I'm not a white person who has always received that privilege. So I can't say that I feel the way that Mr. Sheets does. I've never experienced these things. And some judges have treated me fairly, but I'm saying I have received a lot of discrimination. So I know that I cannot imagine how some of the people who are poor, who are not attorneys, are treated, especially when often in our county, there's no due diligence when it comes to prosecuting poor and minorities. So I say that to say, with my experience in programming, I would like to transform the courts, modernize it, and have real justice in Allegheny County, something that we are not used to. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cowen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. It really has been a pleasure engaging with all of you in this conversation today. So the reasons why I'm requesting and hoping people will learn more about me and vote for me on May 18th, we really have a historic opportunity to reshape our courts with these 9 openings and reshape our court for a long way to go. And when we look at the role of our courts in addressing some of the social justice issues and concerns that the public has, we need to really look carefully at who we're electing and who's willing to take part in that conversation and provide leadership around that conversation. I think I'm well suited with my background, having come to the law as a former practicing social worker and having obtained my master's in social work to provide leadership in this role around those issues. I also previously practiced in Washington, D.C. with D.C.'s Office of the Attorney General and their Child Protection Section. So not only do I have a lot of depth in terms of my practice within Pennsylvania, but I've had a chance to compare and contrast and see what other jurisdictions are doing in terms of providing some creative solutions. One of those solutions that I had access to in all of my cases in DC was access to mediation in all of our cases right at the outset that provided an opportunity for people and their attorneys to sit down together at a table and really distill the critical issues down, really resolve a lot of what we were going to argue about in the courtroom and get to the actual solutions and services more quickly. So we were able to cut down the amount of time that we were going through the adversarial pretrial discovery back and forth, et cetera, and able to serve our clients more quickly and more efficiently. I'd like to see something like that within our court system here, within our family division here. Again, we have 9 openings. I think it's really important that we do have individuals who are dedicated to remaining in the family division. I think many of our candidates in the field do have the aspirations of the criminal court, which is fantastic. I'm one of the individuals who would like to stay dedicated to the family division, particularly the juvenile section, in order to really make sure that as a part of our criminal justice reform, we're providing the best set of services and legal intervention for our children so that we then can cut down on the number of individuals becoming involved in the criminal justice system as adults. In my current role with the county law department, I am the attorney in my office who does, volunteer their time to participate in a number of court improvement work groups around Allegheny County. I'm currently participating in one looking at interpersonal violence and intimate partner violence and how we can better serve individuals who are seeking those PFAs, and really looking at making sure that we're providing equal access to services for everybody involved in those cases, not just the victims. For so long, we've been focused on the victim, that we've left the others behind, that the person who uses violence, we've not provided them with the same kind of access to services. So that's really near and dear to my heart too. And also looking at another work group that I've been a part of in terms of how we can do better to collaborate around our different agencies and around our different courtrooms to ensure that individuals with opioid use disorders are actually not getting their treatment interrupted with multiple incarcerations and when they go to the ACJ, and how we can better serve individuals in order to ensure that they're having continuity in their treatment as they're working through our court system. So, I am the person in my current office who provides leadership around those issues, who carves out the time in a busy week to participate in those hour-long meetings and discussions to bring about real change. I would be that person as a judge. All of those work groups, we're always wanting judicial involvement in those efforts. And it's really important that we have judges who are willing to set aside the time to those issues in order to bring about change. So, I would be that judge who would be willing to participate, engage in the tough conversations, and provide leadership to the community so that we are providing the best court system that we can here in Allegheny County to the public. I'm proud of my highly recommended rating from the Allegheny County Bar Association, and I would appreciate anybody's support on May 18th.
I've done 6 shows prior to this one, but I was excited about this opportunity to speak to the 3 of you. I mean, I don't know what drew my excitement level, but it was through the roof. And this has been an amazing show. Listening to your perspectives and garnering, your attention to detail on some of these really, really important issues is exactly what we need on the bench. I really want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, for taking this time to lay it all out there, and to give our potential voters an opportunity to meet you. The one question that I have for you before we end our interview today is, how can they find you? Ms. Cowen, how can our potential constituents find you online should they want to learn more about your platform and yourself?
Yes, just Google Vote Cowen, VOTECOWAN, votecowen.com. And that's our website. All the contact information, in-depth information about my background, et cetera. And I'm always happy to speak with anybody. You can input your email address on that and we will follow up with you. I love these kind of conversations. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Mr. Sheets.
Todd, I have a team of people that are helping me get elected. I've been informed that we will soon have a Facebook page. I have personally never been a member of that platform. This judicial one is forcing me to. But I would encourage anyone that is interested in talking to me further about my candidacy or any issues to call me at 412-916-5995 or email me directly at jimmysheets13, jimmysheets13 @gmail.com. And I will respond to the emails or calls personally until, and unless we have another forum set up to do that.
All right. Miss Rosemary Crawford.
Hi, Rosemary Crawford for Judge.com. Rosemary Crawford for Judge.com has all my information on that, and I would appreciate anyone taking a look at that. I'd be grateful.
Well, folks, this is episode 7 of Meet the Candidates. You have had an opportunity to step into the mindset, of 3 of the hottest candidates who are looking for a seat on this year's term for Court of Common Pleas judge. May 18th is the date. They've provided their social media platforms and their contact information. I'm sure they want you to hit them up to learn more about how they can bring change to our present climate and change to the bench. Well, that ends our 7th episode of Meet the Candidates. You had an amazing opportunity to hear from 3 of the hottest candidates who are looking for you to vote for them for Court of Common Pleas judge on May 18th. If you like this show and you want to see others, please do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because fighting for you is what I do.